Hello.
How are you doing with this chaos? Just a second, they are still joining us. Are you having classes, virtual classes?
No.
No? All right.
Can you hear me? ¿Me pueden
Yes,
escuchar?
yes.
Oh.
Okay. The idea today is to analyze the Battle of Malden and um, revise some concepts about Old English poetry, right? So that we can move on next Monday. The girls are conducting a class on Beowulf, which is the hero in Scandinavian mythology, right? As you have gods and goddesses in Roman mythology and Greek mythology, Beowulf is uh, the hero, the representative hero of Scandinavia. I say Scandinavian mythology because we all know that the Vikings, the Angles, the Jutes came from the Scandinavian peninsula, right? So they shared all the beliefs, all the mythological tales. What you may find is some let's say, variations in spelling or in, let's say, some enlargement of the same tales that were still going on in the oral tradition. That's why you may find that different spellings for Thor or for Tyr, right? But they come up from the same mythology. So, what do you remember? What do you know about the Anglo-Saxon tradition? The Anglo-Saxon. Yes, Milagros, your cat.
I'm sorry, he's just sitting in the keyboard and he doesn't let me see anything. He's annoying.
No, I know. I have a dog that when I start with the classes starts going around the table and walks to, I know. And the other day she grabbed a shoe and I was giving the class and I could see the shoe going on the air, right? It was like a cartoonish scene because she wanted to catch the attention somehow. Okay. Well,
Well,
I just,
about Anglo-Saxon poems, there are a lot of characteristics presented here in the Battle of Mardon. For example, that they are warriors, they are violence. It is also representing something that happened in their daily life. We can see how people death as loyalty for her king and the people, their king and the people who live there.
right. I forgot to, because one of you asked me to record the class. So I will start the recording. Esperen que no me acuerdo ni cómo era. Do you remember? Does it have camera? Do I have the option to record?
Si estás desde la cuenta institucional, se supone que sí.
Ah, no. You are recording, Bautista. Bueno, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so good, Ludmila. what do you need to know about the Anglo-Saxons? First of all, they were polytheists. They have the supreme god that is called Odin, right? And then, of course, it was a warlike, let's say, race. So many of the gods are in connection to war. And the sea. You can see this clearly in the series about Vikings and Anglo-Saxons. The sea, the ships were their, let's say, activity, fighting, conquering, right? And they mastered the seas. So think about the map, the Scandinavian peninsula, the North Sea, right? Their language is called Old English. So when we say that, we cannot say this word is Old English. What we say is this word is old-fashioned or is archaic. Because if we say Old English, we are referring to a totally different language, which is more similar to German than to English. On the other side of the Battle of Maldon, you have the translation into Old English. I want to draw your attention there because I want to mark certain things about rhythm, right? Let me read the first lines. I'm not an expert in Old English, but I will try for you to understand how it sounds. It says, Woden ba wol was fast for wateren emerden. We sing a word west over Penton. Offer sir water silgas wedon. Linden the London, Linden Baron. That is all English. Very strong consonants. And of course, this guttural sound that comes from here, right? So this is Old English. And as you can see, this is the composition of the Battle of Maldon that was transmitted orally, right? So look at the first line there. We say that Old English poetry has rhythm, musicality, but it does not have rhyme. This is because there are very few vowels and a lot of consonants. So rhyme was not favored. But they had other strategies to create rhythm. And one of them is alliteration. What is the definition of alliteration? And be careful with that because you need to be specific. Alliteration, yes.
Sorry, is the repetition of sounds for the sake of rhythm.
Exactly, but that is incomplete in the sense that rhyme is also a repetition of sounds to create rhythm, you see? So alliteration is the repetition of the consonantal sound at the beginning of the word when the word is stressed. Alliteration is the repetition of the same consonantal sound at the beginning of the word when the word is stressed in initial position, ¿no? ¿Qué vimos anteriormente como alliteration? Fountain, fair, fortune. See, that is alliteration, repetition of the same consonantal sound at the beginning of the word, and the stress is there in initial position. Fountain, fair, fortune, right? So here we have the repetition of the wo. See, Woden, wolf, fast, whatever, ¿no? Bien. Can you see that there is a space in the middle and it's marked with a comma? That space is called caesura. Caesura is like a cut in the middle, see? Because when this was recited, there was a pause in the middle of the line, and in that pause they tend to play the lyre. See? It's Wonderman Walwood fast, pause and the lyre. For whatever and emergent. That would be the rhythm of reciting. And in all the lines you can see a space. No? In the version that you have in modern English, the space is marked by a punctuation mark, a comma, a full stop. But anyway, you say that is caesura. So the rhythm of the text is achieved by alliteration. So if we mark the stresses, we have 2 in the first part and 1 in the second part. I'm talking about the first line, Está, ta, espacio. That will be the rhythm. I can have 2 and 2, 3 and 2. It depends on the line. If you analyze the second line, can you see alliteration there? We sing a word, ¿no? Ahí tenemos 2. Pause, west, over Pantan, another. Bien. So, in poetry, rhythm was achieved through alliteration, through caesura, and having stresses in the first part. La primera parte, cuando se divide en una línea, se llama hemistic. We can say the first hemistic, que sería Wharton, Bar, Walwood, Fast, and the second hemistic for water and American. So, 2 stresses in the first hemistic. ¿Quieren que lo escriba?
Yes, please.
Bien. You can say first hemistic and second hemistic. So we have 2 stresses in the first hemistic and 1 stress in the second, and they are all joined, the stresses, by alliteration. Okay. So it was a culture of loyalty to the king and to the same warriors, because they felt that they were like a kindred, like a family. We use the word kindred to talk about this fellowship, this bond they had that was not necessarily a blood bond, right? Because of this loyalty, this fellowship, another concept is the concept of revenge. If they were attacked, right, they had to take revenge. That was honor, right? The thing is that it was easy to take revenge if we talk about an enemy. But what about a traitor of the same kindred? That was a problem, because if you took revenge on your same family, let's say you were committing a crime, who is going to take revenge on you then? You see? So for them, the worst crime was fratricide, because it was fratricide in the sense of a kindred, right? They were considered family, because it was impossible, or it was very difficult to take revenge, because if not, you were also committing fratricide, you see? So what they did is to send the warrior into exile, or ask the warrior to pay a wargil, que sería como a reward, that could be in connection with treasure, money, or this revenge would take some kind of brave deed. See, the warrior was sent into a mission, right? For example, this question of fratricide is central, because when the Anglo-Saxons were Christianized, right? Because at the beginning they were polytheists, this culture was orally transmitted, but it came a time that the Roman Catholic Church sent evangelists throughout the world, see? And of course, in the meantime, they were Christianized. When we read Beowulf, for example, we can see a mixture and contradictions all the time, because they are talking about the gods and at the same time they are talking about Christianity in the same poem, because the poem was transmitted orally throughout decades and centuries. So in oral transmission, things were added while they recited. You see? Who is, if you know anything about Christianity, who is the representative of fratricide? Someone that killed brothers.
Judas.
King Arthur.
That will be much later. I'm talking about the Genesis.
Maybe.
Alana wrote it. Cain. ¿Sí? Caín y Abel. ¿Sí? Digamos, el paraíso, y Caín mata a Abel. So, Christianity is going to take this idea and show the Anglo-Saxons that their enemies were all descendants of Cain. So when you read Beowulf and the monster that attacks Beowulf, that monster is said to be of Cain's descendants. You see? And this is the way Christianity finds to meld with the Anglo-Saxon. Then the girls are going to talk about Beowulf. I don't want to spoil much, but just to show you that when they were Christianized, there are contradictions and a mixture of beliefs. I don't know if you are watching the last series about, I can't remember, the last kingdom, was it? About Vikings, but Vikings already in the British Isles after the invasion and all that, and they were all the time having this dilemma between worshiping their gods or let's say, worshiping the Christian God. Hmm? In this poem that we have, the Battle of Maldon, we don't, as it is one of the first poems, we don't have any Christian element. Hmm? We can say that all the elements here are pagan and purely Anglo-Saxon. Hmm? Which themes can you find here in this poem? I believe that one of you already started talking about this, but we can revise. Do we have a theme of revenge, for example? Would you like me to go through the poem and see every little part? Yeah, let's start with the wolves of war advance, the Viking troop. First line, you have alliteration. Wolves, war, Viking. See? You have caesura, marked by the comma. So we have 3 stresses in the first hemistich, wolves, war, advance. 2 stresses in the second hemistich, Viking troop. But alliteration only works in wolves, war, y Viking. That is how rhythm is achieved. As regards a rhetorical device, anything that you can say about that word, that first line? Is it all literal? Is it metaphorical?
Yeah, the metaphor about the wolves, talking about the warriors.
Exactly. The wolves of war are the warriors, right? That is a kenning. Remember, we've mentioned kennings, right? Which was, of course, originally Anglo-Saxon, but we use kennings today, and we have mentioned Skywalker, Pathfinder, Ringgiver, right? So the wolves of war is a kenning, meaning the soldiers. It's metaphorical in this sense, because wolves include a connotation. What does it say about the warriors if they are wolves?
They are together in group.
Right. They work together as a group, right?
And they are very savage. I mean, they have no empathy.
Exactly. They compare themselves, of course, with their background. And if you have the name of the hero, Beowulf, the wolf is representative of the culture, right? As being savage, defending the group, right? Attacking for loyalty. Bien. Then we have, and moves by water westward over pans, over the gleaming water bore their shields, right? The seamen brought their linen shields to land. Well, we can picture the whole battle here, the sea, the shields. Something interesting here is that it says, so battle with its glory drew near. I told you that the warriors wanted to die in battle. Why?
Because like that, they would go to Valhalla.
It was the only way to go to the Valhalla, to die in battle, bravely, defending the group, the nation, the kingdom, right? And for them to go to the Valhalla would mean meeting the gods, right? And feasting and drinking. It's a different kind of paradise, right? Meeting the Valkyries, singing, right? And they needed to die in battle to go to the Valhalla because they need to be glorious. They need to achieve glory and honor. Then it says, the time had come for fated men to perish in that place. We know that these are the Anglo-Saxons defending the coast from the Vikings' attack. And also we know that the Vikings attacked and finally conquered the land. So this poem is about a defeat, right? And we have another element, another, let's say, theme, that is fate. And we have mentioned that, remember? What was fate for them, for the Anglo-Saxons? They believed that everything was already written, that they were fated, that their nation or culture would end one day. Right, Gonzalo, weird. Weird would be the word for fate in the Anglo-Saxon culture. So all was already written by the gods, right? And fate would be repeated many times. The idea of fate, it's quite pessimistic. That's why we can say the tone and this culture was gloomy, pessimistic, dark. This idea of something fatal going to happen, right? We have said that they don't use colors. There are no colors in their poems, except red for blood, or maybe silver for shields, right? But there is no description of nature. Every description is connected to the sea, the wild, and how this sea is, let's say, dangerous. The idea that they would perish, that they need to fight the sea, to fight other enemies, that they would receive attack, right? That's why it's a fateful, gloomy atmosphere in every poem, see? In every poem that is epic. Remember that we have discussed different genres, because when they were feasting in the hall, they were laughing. It's not that they were crying all the time, no? They were laughing and making riddles with a double meaning, right? Especially in relation to sex. And I don't know if I have included a riddle that has this double entendre. But if we talk about epic poems, the deeds of a hero and revenge and loyalty, we can say that the atmosphere is dark, gloomy, pessimistic. Bien. Another important thing is repetition. In the first line, the wolves of war advanced the Viking troop. In fact, the second part is a repetition of the first, right? So repetition is also part of an element of the composition, saying the same thing different words. You have, for example, on line 17, when it starts, Wolfmar was wounded, Berthnor's sister's son. There you have a repetition and the presence of genealogy. They were proud of their ancestors. So there is repetition by saying el hijo de, el nieto de, all the time. Although they knew that this presence of genealogy is to show honor, loyalty, nationality. And then it says he chose death in battle. Again, the same, to die in glory there. Cut down by swords, but there at once was vengeance paid to the Vikings. Here we have the other subject matter, the other theme, revenge. Struck one of them so fiercely with his sword, restraining not the stroke. What is that? Retraining not the stroke. It's a rhetorical device. Remember, the construction needed to be in the negative.
Elituty or
Bien.
lituty, I don't know how it was pronounced.
You say it is an instance or an example of litotes. Always in the plural, an example of litotes. When you have a structure that is in the negative, porque dice restraining not, but you mean exactly the opposite of restraining here. Restraining not the stroke, meaning he struck with all its force, ¿no? Entonces el negativo hace que yo me vaya al otro extremo de el significado de restraining. Right? That's the litotes. And towards the end, have you found any other? Towards the end?
What it says, no novice was the L.
Perfect. That's another instance. Again, the negative particle. And which is the word that is changed to the opposite here?
Novice, meaning that it was really experienced.
Exactly. Perfect. What's the point of including litotes? Emphasis and taking the idea to the other extreme, right? Bien. You have a file that is called Anglo-Saxon Poetry, and then you have a secular, religious, and the activities for the Battle of Malden. Right, so we have discussed as regards the composition of poetry, rhythm and stresses, caesura and alliteration, right? Then as regards rhetorical devices, we have repetition of the same idea with other words, litotes and kennings. As regards cultural elements and themes, we have mentioned pride in ancestors. That's why it's always the presence of genealogy, the theme of fate. I've said versus God's will because when it's not present in this poem, but to show you later on that when they are Christianized, the idea of faith that is pagan was changed into God's will, right? And when we talk about Beowulf, you will find many references in the poem about God's will. Huh? Well, loyalty, revenge, fame, bravery, supernatural characteristics of the hero. It's not present in the Battle of Maldon because this is a historical event, right? This battle took place. It's real. You have the information in that sheet. And it was included in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles. Remember that the group that delivers the class the other day talked about King Alfred, the father of the English prose in Wessex, starting the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles, and then just to write, of course, historical events, to keep a record of their culture. And then it was prose, but poems were included as you would include a picture today, no? So this poem was included after the narration of this battle. But for example, the heroes, right? If we talk about Beowulf or any other hero, had supernatural powers, right? They could swim underwater for months. They can be, they can fight a dragon, right? Of course, all connected with mythology, no? Well, we have gloomy and fatalistic atmosphere, elegiac, mournful tone. Why is an elegy? Because the hero dies. Remember that an elegy is a poem we've read Annabel Lee. Remember? And we said it was an elegy because it was the mourning of the death of a character. Bien. So here the Battle of Maldon is also an elegy because the hero, Bernard, dies. In Beowulf, we also know that the hero dies, right? So they all have towards the end this elegiac and mournful tone. Bien. The epic poems are all about the kings and the warriors. So they are all in connection to the aristocracy. No slaves are mentioned, nor peasants are mentioned, although they existed, of course, no? Because they would recite these epic poems after the battle in the hall with the king and feasting there. And remember that the king would give rewards to the warrior. That's why there is a kenning for the king that is ring giver, meaning giving gold and swords, right, as a reward. But of course, you have the king, the nobility, the warriors, the peasants, and also the slaves, because when they conquered land, they would take slaves, right? Yeah. You know that they had a language, a written language, a little system, let's say, that were the runes, las runas. I have included some information about that just for you to know how they worked, I mean, what they were like. The thing is that the people, the common people, were illiterate. It was a culture of oral tradition. The only ones that could, let's say, know about runes were part of the aristocracy, or, for example, the chieftain or the leaders. And this alphabet was not used, let's say, to write chronicles or to write a message, no? It was just used sometimes for magic, right? This question of, that's why today you have a lot of books and things que te tira las runas y a ver qué sale. Bueno, eso, con el tema de los celtas también, que hay mucho chanta dando vuelta que habla de las runas celtas. Los celtas no tenían runas. Las runas son anglosajonas y escandinavas, ¿no? Los celtas tenían otro lenguaje que tenía que ver con el nombre de los árboles y armaban el abecedario con el nombre de los árboles. El lenguaje se llama Ogam, y escribían mensajes a los dioses o mensajes secretos poniendo hojas de los árboles una al lado de la otra de acuerdo a el nombre del árbol. Entonces ahí armaban el mensaje. These were manipulated by the druids, por los druidas, por los sacerdotes, right? Remember that for the Celts, the trees were sacred. They were like gods. Y ahí viene el árbol de la vida, que por ahí nos colgamos, que tiene que ver con esa tradición celta, que es un árbol que está todo encerrado en un círculo, porque los celtas creían mucho en la circularidad y el renacimiento y volver a revivir, contrary to the Anglo-Saxons. Well, so the runes were an Anglo-Saxon system, I would say secret system of language at the beginning. And then we need to talk about transliteration. Porque ustedes dicen, bueno, sí, tenían este secret language. All the poems were, or the culture was passed from generation to generation in the oral tradition. Pero en algún momento se empezó a escribir. This happened more or less with the introduction of Christianity, when they brought the Latin alphabet, ¿no? ¿Me van siguiendo? Bien. Entonces, ¿qué hicieron? Ellos escuchaban sonidos, los priests. Y estos sonidos los iban transfiriendo al alfabeto, digamos, a nuestro alfabeto. Es lo mismo que se hace con el chino, ¿sí? Se llama transliteration. Ustedes saben que un nombre, una palabra china, se escribe con un montón de símbolos. Cuando el chino lo lee, nosotros escribimos Chungwing, ¿no? CHU, lo que sea. Eso es transliteration. Es adaptar el sonido de un lenguaje que tiene símbolos a los símbolos del alfabeto nuestro. eso es lo que ustedes tienen escrito, en realidad, en ese que les leí, Wodon ba Wolwood fast for water and emergence. Eso es transliteration, porque ustedes ven un Old English language, pero con los caracteres de nuestro lenguaje. Hay algunas diéresis, algunos diferentes, ¿por qué? ¿Qué hacían los monjes? Cuando no era exactamente igual, le hacían algún dibujito más parecido a lo que era la runa, para que se entienda que ese sonido era igual, ¿sí? Bien. So, thanks to Christianity and to King Alfred, we have the start of writing the tradition. Because if not, everything was oral. Bien, so we have secular poetry, the epic poem, the lyrics, and the riddles. And when they started being Christianized, we have religious poetry. And the girls mentioned Cadman and Kenilworth the other day. We have two names, of course, everything in connection to Christianity. But what I wanted to add is that they would talk about God as they would talk about their heroes, with the same language, with the same rhetorical devices. God was a warrior, you see? So they would talk about genealogy and all the description that they would use for their heroes, they would use for their God. Now they're Christian God, right? Well, any questions? All right. So next week, we'll see what happens. But on Monday, we will have the class about Beowulf, right? And I would like to start with Middle Ages. So the idea is this. On Wednesday, we start an introduction. And the other Monday, I don't remember so not next week, but the group will present the class about Middle Ages. Okay? Is that right?
Okay.
All right.
Perfect. So, if no questions, that will be the end. I'm very glad that you could be here, right? So, I hope we can meet in person next week.
All right.
All right. Bye
Okay,
bye.
bye.
You.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Hi, teacher.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
You.